SGC here, and we are back for a movie review.
살고 싶으면 타요.
Peninsula, also known as Train to Busan Presents Peninsula. 2020 action horror film directed by returning director Yeon Sang-ho. It is a standalone sequel to the 2016 Train to Busan. Follows a soldier this time around who is sent along with his team to retrieve a truck full of money from the wasteland of the Korean Peninsula, now inhabited by zombies, rogue militia, and a nice family. Weird write-up on Wiki. But this was selected to be shown at the 2020 Cannes Film Festival, but was cancelled due to COVID, and this was released back in Korea in July of this year. So some slight changes. We have Park Joo-Suk writing instead of Yang Song-han doing it writing by himself. Cinematography, Lee Hyung-deok. And who do we got for Train to Busan? Lee Hyung-deok again. So cinematography wise, we have the same team, and cast wise, everyone is new. So there's that. So it's a new story, it's a standalone, and it takes place 4 years after, and then that's the entire film. So what did I think? Well, first off, if you just do some simple Googling, Train to Busan has around like 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it is pretty up there. Yeah, 94% of 115 critics. Whereas Peninsula, if you can catch it in theaters now, it is currently, as of filming, at 54%. So there's that. And interestingly enough, Seoul Station, Train to Busan's animated sequel, also directed by the same director, is sitting at 100% based on 15 reviews for critics. So there's that, and apparently there is a prequel to Peninsula as well coming from this team. But anyways, let's get to this actual film. So I have to be honest, when Train to Busan came out, I wasn't raving about it. I saw it as more of a, hey, good job Korea, you pulled it off and you did a good Korean zombie film. It was nice, and maybe I am just blind. But having watched Peninsula, I was like, wow, Train to Busan had some really good things going for it. One, characters that you cared about, character development so you actually care about them, and a rather simple plot. So in Peninsula, we have that again in terms of the simple plot. The plot is simple. It's 4 years after Train to Busan, actually in real time, 2016 and 2020. And then now we have this soldier captain guy who escaped when the outbreak happened. He goes to Hong Kong, comes back to find a truck full of money and brings it back, so he gets some of it. He has a team, and then he meets the locals, and the locals survive. I think this is the most well-stocked zombie apocalypse setting I've ever seen. Everyone has guns, cars are indestructible. They do carry through with the light aspect of the zombies from Train to Busan in terms of how they are very sensitive to light, and they only move around at night. No, during the day, because there's light. Whereas at night, they're much more docile and only respond to sounds. And they give rather good set pieces using this concept. There's a lot of CGI initial de-drifting happening, but I enjoyed it for what it is. But let's go back to the characters. So we have our captain. We get a sob story of his family and his brother-in-law, and now they're thrown back into the island, and then they meet up with the locals. For some strange reason, there are no women around in this militia group. Like, I don't understand. Like it's interesting that they have this setup with this arena and all that. It's interesting, but you never are sold that this is an actual ecosystem of they scavenge for food, but yet cars are no big deals. Cars after 4 years never I guess, like, you just assume all the car batteries work for after 4 years of not using it. You know, that's real. And just not having any women around is also very interesting. And it did give me a sense of how typical of these type of dystopian films is that, you know, men are horny and they're gonna go crazy for women. That wasn't there, surprisingly. Like, there was only one woman, and she's part of our main cast for the latter half of the film, and she has 2 daughters, and I think that's the only female characters in the entire film, except for someone at the end. I mean, it doesn't even matter, like Jane. So that's interesting, and it makes me wonder if they will ever do a dystopian movie where the women are hornier than the men. So that'd be an interesting point to take. But yeah, like, the ecosystem, it's nice visually. Like, you see it all in the trailers, the arena fights and all that. It's not really an arena fight. They don't do anything. They just watch them die. So it's not very enticing. So it is kind of like, why is this happening? It would be more, it's not very entertaining. But it happens. And then we have this hierarchy of privates and lieutenants and what have you. But again, the ecosystem doesn't feel like it's fleshed out, that it's a real thing. There's that. So it's interesting that the budget, I feel, went straight into probably the cast. I don't know much of the cast. The girls are good. The whole initial de-drifting action set pieces is a nice character moment for her to shine. The mom is just there, and everyone knows how to shoot. So there's that, and then you got the dad who's sort of like, is he all there or is he not? And then, you know, we actually figure that out, which is surprising. So yeah, the characters, it's just, you don't really care too much about them except that they force you to care. Like, at the end of the movie, there's this one sequence where it feels like, oh, it's going down the same path as Train to Busan, where it's really tugging at your heartstrings. And you're like, oh man, I feel something, because it's still sad, like, overall. And it's not really sad overall because of the film, but rather, like, that moment is sad because I guess everyone sort of relates that, oh, losing a loved one has that kind of, like, heartstring emotion. But as a whole thing, it's not, like, it didn't do its job to make you feel those feelings. Unlike Train to Busan, because it builds up those characters, and then when that moment hits, you're like, wow, they went through a lot, and this is happening, and I just have to accept it, and that's that. So there's an over-reliance on CGI. A lot of the cars shouldn't move the way they do, but it's smart, it's different, I would give it that, and it goes back to the whole good job Korea for pulling this Korean production off. Again, it is impressive for a Korean production on a budget of 16 million. Definitely the scale is much bigger, and I wouldn't know what to imagine if, like, they got a budget of, say, I don't know, World War Z. Like, what would happen if this team had a budget of World War Z, which, if I can look it up right now, is well, I mean, granted, directed by it's not directed by Fincher, but 190 to 269 million. I think that's including marketing. But we had that for World War Z, and then we got 16 million, and we had Peninsula. So I don't know. Like, there's a prequel coming to Peninsula from what I read. Is there going to be another sequel? Is this world worth staying around? I mean, we're not going to get 28 months later anyway, so I definitely wouldn't mind a Korean, you know, standalone sequel once again, just to see what's going to go down. Especially the fact that they pulled that North Korea, oh, thank God we didn't unify before all of this narrative. Makes me wonder what's happening in North Korea, what's happening in the rest of the world type of vibe. They definitely can go in different ways. One biggest surprise is the English. We have the guy, the mercenary old white guy, who sends our team back to the peninsula. He has pretty good English. Good casting for that. But the two hot talk shows, I don't know where you got them. And oh my god, the fact that you, for some reason, had to set it in Hong Kong really irked me in terms of their Cantonese. Some of their Cantonese is on par with Deadpool 2, where it's literally not Cantonese, and they butcher it to so bad. Or there's some part where it's so butchered that I sort of understand what they're saying, and there's some parts that are like fine. But it's like one guy's super inconsistent. I know he's Korean and he speaks Cantonese, but there's one scene where they're eating at like a night market food stall type of thing, and then someone yells at them for like, hey, they're Koreans, they're the virus people, blah blah blah. Like that whole sequence of his Cantonese was like, dang. It's like, I wasn't sure if that guy's Korean or from mainland, but definitely not a Cantonese speaker. So I seriously swear sometimes I just wish they spoke like Korean. So it's just like narratively they're speaking other languages, but it's okay, they're speaking Korean. So yeah, so it's an action horror. I really hoped it was going the Aliens route, where it just became much more action-packed, and it definitely is. But just the characters, like, you don't really care about them. Like, there are moments where you're like, hey, I see that, I'm supposed to connect, and then go forward, and things happen to these characters because of that scene you show me, I'm supposed to connect. That doesn't happen. Like, the kids are nice, but there's no character depth with any of these characters, and I guess you could say like the brother-in-law and the main character has that vibe, but it's still really pushing it and stretching it. So there's that. Anyways, I'm pretty much done here. I can't believe, you know, we also got another zombie film that came out from Korea just last year as well. So that's a plus. And not last year, sorry, it came out this year too. It's came out in June. So it's gonna be released on Netflix in September. Interesting. So June we got #Alive, and then July we got Peninsula. Wow, that's really putting all their eggs in the basket. You gotta spread out those audience members, really. But anyways, I will talk about Alive in another video. But so yeah, Peninsula. I mean, the fact that I didn't really rave about Train to Busan, I think I like Peninsula more than the people that will love Train to Busan. But then again, it goes all the way back to the whole good job. You know, you're not known for this type of production and you pulled it off again. Granted, it is a different scale, different type of film, rather of a sort of more horror in the first one, Train to Busan. This is more action. And I do wonder where he's going to go forward. Like, really, I'm curious to see his career and all that stuff, so there's that. But that's it. This is the movie review for Peninsula, Train to Busan Presents. So keep liking, keep watching, and subscribe, and share, because sharing is caring. And that is all for this movie review. So take care and stay safe. Out.